My name is Terry Cameron. I was a Fallon County Sheriff from 1963 to 1975. I worked and lived in this building for 12 years, but I'm getting ahead of my story. I was born in Minnesota in 1924 and raised in Ollie, Montana. I was still in high school in Ollie when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, but I wanted to get into the fight. So as soon as I was old enough, I joined the Marines. My younger brother Cog also joined, but he was only 17, and our parents had to sign for him. We went through boot camp together, but then Cog was sent to the infantry, and I was placed in a tank. And then we both shipped out to the Pacific. The Marines fought in the war by island hopping across the Pacific towards Japan. This meant we were transported in Navy ships and then boarded small vessels to invade the island. Cog and I were headed for a small speck of an island in the Pacific called Iwo Jima. It was only 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. The brass estimated an easy victory. It would only take us a week. Instead, it was one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific. Before we hit the beaches, the planes dropped bombs for 74 days. Then, when we got there, the Navy ships shelled the island for 3 days straight. We landed and there was no resistance, until we were all on the beach, and then all hell broke loose. We were sitting ducks. We couldn't find cover, and we couldn't dig into the volcanic ash. It was blood and guts for the next 5 weeks. We suffered about 30,000 casualties. Nearly 7,000 Marines died before it was over. A Marine was killed or wounded every 2 minutes for days. I drove a tank, and in the first days of the battle, a tank's driver's lifespan was only 10 hours. The island was covered in landmines, and when they went off, they blew up all of the explosives inside of the tank. One time, Cog was with his unit and watching the tanks cross an open area. He picked out a tank and was telling another Marine that his brother was in that tank. That tank hit a mine and exploded. No survivors. Thankfully, that was not my tank, but Cog did not know that. Cog and I never saw each other during the battle and never knew if the other was alive. For me, the worst part of Iwo Jima were the minefields. When we went through the minefields, we would follow behind minesweepers. They would unroll toilet paper for us to follow. It was very stressful. When most people think of Iwo Jima, they think of the flag being raised on Mount Suribachi. It made for a historic photo, and even a statue in Washington, D.C. I remember. A detachment of Marines were sent to the highest point on the island and ordered to raise the flag. They did it, and almost everyone on that tiny island could see the stars and stripes waving. When it went up, the Marines cheered, and the Navy ships blew their horns. The Japanese must have known it was over, but they never surrendered. Not until all 21,000 of them were dead. After a couple of months, the battle was over, and my unit was loading up to go back to Hawaii for some well-earned R&R. We had stored our guns and weapons and were waiting on the beach to board the Navy ships. While we stood there, unarmed and unprotected, 90 Japanese officers rushed out of the caves and attacked us. The Japanese had run out of ammo, so they came at us with swords and bayonets. We fought them hand-to-hand or with whatever we could find. We won that fight, too. We finally got back to Hawaii, and they put us in tents, fed us hot chow, and told us to rest up for the next battle. One day, I was sitting on my cot and saw a Marine walk by several tents away. I couldn't see his face, but I knew that it had to be my brother Cog. It was. We hadn't seen each other since the fighting began, and I was so glad to see he made it. That was a good day. We never went to the next battle. The war ended several months later. Japan surrendered after the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was no more fighting for us. But we did occupy Japan after the war, and I was stationed in Nagasaki until I was discharged. There was a lot of radioactivity from the bomb. I suspect that the radiation exposure is what caused my cancer. I never smoked, and yet I died from lung cancer at age 50. But as I told my family, this is just one of the many ways that I could have died. My name is Terrence Cameron, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. I served proudly and did my duty. Semper Fi.